I'm Lucia, 23, and I never thought a social media notification would break me. The picture showed my parents beaming at my sister Megan's art exhibition, champagne glasses raised in celebration, exactly when they should have been watching me receive my college diploma. Their message that morning still burned in my mind. We're too tired to make the trip. Years of being second best crystallized in that moment, and I finally understood the truth. If you're watching this, let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. I read all your comments. And trust me, this story might help you find your voice too. I grew up in a quiet tree-lined neighborhood in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in a two-story blue colonial with white trim and a backyard swing set that my father Robert built when I was 6. Our family looked picture perfect from the outside. Dad was an accountant at a respected firm downtown. Mom Karen taught third grade at the local elementary school. And my sister Megan and I were good students who never got into serious trouble. But beneath that polished exterior, there was always an undercurrent I couldn't quite name until I was older. My sister Megan, who is 2 years younger than me, was always the shining star in my parents' universe. She had this natural artistic talent that emerged when she was just 4 years old, creating watercolor paintings that my mother immediately framed and displayed throughout our home. My parents' eyes would light up whenever Megan entered a room, her auburn hair bouncing in natural curls that matched my mother's. Her expressive hands always in motion as she described her latest creative inspiration. I was different. From an early age, I was the practical one, the responsible one, with straight brown hair always neatly pulled back and notebooks organized by subject and color. While Megan dreamed in colors and shapes, I found comfort in words and numbers. My analytical mind mirrored my father's, but instead of creating a bond between us, it seemed to make me invisible. It was as if they expected me to excel to be self-sufficient, while Megan needed their constant encouragement and attention. The pattern was established early and only grew more pronounced as we got older. When I was 12, I qualified for the state debate championship, the youngest student from my school to ever achieve that honor. My debate coach called my parents personally to emphasize what an extraordinary achievement it was. The tournament fell on the same weekend as Megan's dance recital, where she was one of 20 girls performing in a group number. There was never any question about which event my parents would attend. "You'll be fine without us, Lucia," my mother said as she helped Megan into her costume. "You're so good at handling things on your own, and you know how nervous your sister gets before performances." My debate coach drove me to the state capitol for the tournament. I placed second overall and received a silver medal that now sits in a box under my bed. My parents put a framed photo of Megan in her ballet tutu on the mantle. This wasn't an isolated incident. When I was inducted into the National Honor Society my junior year, my parents sent my Aunt Julia in their place because Megan had an art show the same evening. When I won a prestigious scholarship that would cover my entire college tuition, my father nodded approvingly and said, "That's what we expected from you," before turning his attention to Megan's latest painting. Christmas mornings told the same story. While both of us received gifts, there was always a clear disparity. Megan would unwrap expensive art supplies, professional-grade pastels imported from France, a handcrafted easel once, even a pottery wheel that took up half of our basement. I would receive practical items, SAT prep books, a scientific calculator, sensible clothing for college interviews. Useful things, valuable things even, but never anything that showed they really knew me. The strange part was that despite all this, Megan and I maintained a good relationship. She wasn't spoiled in the traditional sense. She was genuinely talented and kind-hearted. Sometimes I caught a flash of embarrassment in her eyes when our parents would lavish praise on her while barely acknowledging my achievements. Once, after I'd won a citywide essay contest and our parents had forgotten to attend the award ceremony, Megan slipped a congratulatory card under my bedroom door with a handwritten note: "You deserve to have everyone there cheering for you." I developed coping mechanisms. I became fiercely independent, priding myself on not needing validation or support. I told myself that my parents' behavior made me stronger, more self-reliant. I channeled my hurt into achievement, graduating as valedictorian, with a full scholarship to Northwestern University. Deep down, I kept hoping that someday something I accomplished would finally make my parents sit up and take notice, that they would finally see me. My high school graduation offered a preview of what was to come. My parents attended, of course. It would have been too obvious an absence to explain to friends and neighbors. But they brought along an entire cheering section for Megan, who was receiving a special arts recognition award during the ceremony. My mother spent the morning helping Megan select the perfect outfit to wear on stage, while I got ready alone in my room. At the ceremony, when my name was called as valedictorian, I heard my father's obligatory applause while my mother fussed with her camera, saving its memory card space for Megan's moment. During my graduation speech, I scanned the audience and found my family in the fifth row. My father was checking his watch. My mother was helping Megan adjust the collar of her blouse. Neither of them was looking at me as I spoke about futures and possibilities and the journeys we were all about to begin. It hurt, but I had grown accustomed to the pain. I told myself that college would be different, that the distance would give us perspective, that my academic success at a prestigious university would finally earn me the recognition I craved. I told myself that my college graduation 4 years later would be the moment when everything would change. I was wrong. Northwestern University sits on the shores of Lake Michigan in Evanston, Illinois, about 400 miles from Minneapolis. The physical distance from my family home offered me something I hadn't fully anticipated: perspective. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who didn't know me as Megan's sister or the responsible one. I was just Lucia, a freshman with a double major in economics and political science, with her own strengths and interests and personality. My roommate Ashley came from a small town in Michigan, the daughter of high school teachers who clearly adored her. 2 weeks into our first semester, her parents drove 6 hours each way just to take her out to dinner. They brought homemade cookies for both of us and asked about my classes with genuine interest. When they left, Ashley complained good-naturedly about their overprotectiveness, and I found myself unable to comprehend how she could take such devotion for granted. "Your parents really love you," I said, as we shared the cookies later that night in our dorm room. "Well, yeah," Ashley replied with a laugh. "Don't yours?" The question hit me harder than I expected. "Of course," I said automatically. But for the first time, I wondered if what I had experienced was actually normal. As freshman year progressed, I began noticing other differences. My new friends talked about their parents calling to check in, sending care packages, making plans to visit. My phone rarely rang, and when it did, the conversations with my mother inevitably turned to updates about Megan. How her first year at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design was going, how her professors were already singling her out for special attention, how she missed having me around to help with her homework. Parents' Weekend arrived in October, and I spent weeks planning for my family's visit. I researched restaurants that would accommodate my father's dietary restrictions and my mother's preference for ambiance. I found an exhibition at a local gallery I thought Megan would enjoy. I cleaned our dorm room until it sparkled and put fresh flowers on the windowsill. 3 days before they were supposed to arrive, my mother called. "Sweetheart, I don't think we're going to make it this weekend after all," she said, her voice bright, but with an undercurrent of dismissal that I recognized all too well. "Megan has been invited to submit work to a student showcase, and the deadline is Monday. We need to help her finish and frame her pieces." I sat on my bed clutching the phone, staring at the flowers I had bought with my limited student budget. "But you've known about Parents' Weekend for months," I said, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "I made reservations at Campagnola for Saturday night. Dad loves Italian food." "I know, and we're disappointed too," my mother replied, though she didn't sound disappointed at all. "You can understand how important this opportunity is for Megan, though. Her professor says this showcase could lead to a summer internship." I did understand. I had always understood. That was the problem. "Maybe we can come another weekend," my father said, having apparently been listening on the extension, "when things aren't so hectic." They never did visit that year, or the next. Northwestern was too far. The timing never quite right. Their schedule's always too full with events centered around Megan. Meanwhile, they made the 8-hour round trip to attend Megan's freshman art showcase and her sophomore year spring exhibition, and countless other events that my mother documented extensively on social media, always with the hashtag #HadProudParents. During my sophomore year, I began seeing a therapist at the University Counseling Center. Dr. Levine was in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair, and a direct manner that I found comforting. In our sessions, I began to recognize the emotional neglect that had characterized my upbringing. It sounds like your parents have created a dynamic where Megan is the family's emotional center, Dr. Levine observed during one session. And you've been cast in the role of the self-sufficient one, who doesn't need attention or nurturing. But I am self-sufficient, I insisted. I've always been able to take care of myself. Out of necessity or by nature? She asked gently. The question stayed with me for weeks. My junior year, I secured a prestigious internship at an economic policy think tank in Washington, D.C. for the summer. The application process had been grueling with multiple rounds of interviews and a policy analysis project that had kept me working late into the night for weeks. When I received the acceptance email, I immediately called home, excited to share the news. My mother answered, sounding distracted. "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," she said after I told her about the internship. Then, without pause, "Did I tell you Megan's been selected for a special mentorship program with that artist she loves, the one who had the exhibition at the Walker last year?" I hadn't even finished describing my internship. She hadn't asked a single question about what I would be doing or where I would be living in DC. "No, you didn't mention that," I said, the excitement draining from my voice. "It's such an honor," my mother continued, either not noticing or choosing to ignore my deflated tone. "Only 3 students were chosen. We're planning a celebration dinner this weekend." I hung up shortly after telling myself that I didn't need their validation, that I was proud of myself and that was enough. But the truth was, it wasn't enough. It had never been enough. When Megan graduated from high school the spring of my junior year at Northwestern, my parents organized an elaborate celebration. They rented a venue, invited extended family from across the country, and commissioned a professional photographer. My mother spent weeks planning the menu and decor. My father took 3 days off work to help prepare. I flew home for the event, having saved up for my campus job to afford the plane ticket. As I watched my sister cross the stage to receive her diploma, our family's cheering section erupted with applause and whistles. My uncle had created large cardboard cutouts of Megan's face that several cousins held up. My mother sobbed openly with pride. Later at the graduation party, relatives circulated with champagne flutes toasting Megan's accomplishments and her acceptance to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. My Aunt Julia found me by the punch bowl watching from a distance. "Your graduation must have been something," she said, squeezing my arm. I gave her a tight smile. "It was fine." Her eyes searched my face. "Just fine." I shrugged, unwilling to tarnish Megan's day with my resentment. It was what it was. The truth was, my high school graduation had been nothing like this. There had been a dinner at a local restaurant with my parents and Megan, and a small gathering of close family the following weekend. No rented venue, no extended family flying in, no professional photographer documenting every moment. As my senior year at Northwestern began, I started planning for my college graduation. Despite everything, despite the years of evidence to the contrary, I still harbored hope that this milestone, graduating with honors from a top university, would finally be the one that mattered to my parents. That they would finally show up for me the way they always had for Megan. I sent formal graduation announcements 3 months in advance. I secured extra tickets for the ceremony, anticipating that perhaps my parents might want to bring Megan or other family members. I researched restaurants near campus for a celebration dinner and made a reservation at an upscale place with a lake view. I arranged for a colleague of my father's who lived in Chicago to recommend a hotel where they could stay for the weekend. My mother's response to the graduation announcement was lukewarm. "We'll have to see how things look closer to the date," she said when I called to confirm they had received it. "Your father usually has a busy period at work around then, and I'm not sure what Megan will have going on." "It's my college graduation, Mom," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "I'd really like you and Dad to be there." "Of course we want to be there, sweetie," she replied quickly. "We'll certainly try to make it work." Try to make it work. As if my graduation from Northwestern University, with a double major honors and a job already lined up at a top firm in Chicago, was an optional social event they might attend if nothing better came up. But I held on to hope. I continued with my plans. I picked out a dress to wear under my graduation gown. I had my hair trimmed. I sent my parents the information about the hotel and the dinner reservation, the ceremony time, and where they could park. I did everything right, everything I could think of to make it easy for them to attend. 1 week before graduation, my mother called. "We're definitely planning to come," she said, but there was a hesitation in her voice that made my stomach clench. "Megan has an exhibition opening that weekend, but it's in the evening on Saturday, so we should be able to make it to your ceremony in the morning and then drive back in time for her event." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone against my ear. It wasn't ideal. They would miss the graduation lunch and the department awards where I was receiving recognition for my thesis. But it was better than nothing. They would see me walk across the stage. They would be there for the most important part. "That sounds good, Mom," I said. "I appreciate you making it work." "Of course, honey," she replied, and for the first time in a long time, I believed her. I shouldn't have. Graduation day dawned clear and warm, the May sun casting a golden glow over Northwestern's lakeside campus. I woke early, my stomach a knot of nerves and excitement. Today was the day I'd been working toward for 4 years. Longer, really, if you counted all the advanced placement classes and extracurricular activities I'd packed into high school to secure my scholarship. My roommates were already up, their families having arrived the previous day. The apartment buzzed with excited chatter and the scent of coffee as parents fussed over their daughters, helping with makeup and taking photos. Ashley's mother offered to help me with my hair, smoothing it into an elegant twist that would sit neatly under my graduation cap. "Your parents driving in this morning?" she asked as she secured a final bobby pin. "That's the plan," I said, checking my phone again. No messages yet, but it was still early. The ceremony wouldn't start until 11. By 9 o'clock, my roommates had departed with their families for pre-ceremony brunches and photos. I sat alone in our apartment, my graduation gown laid out on my bed, checking my phone every few minutes. Still nothing from my parents. I sent a text to my mother. "Morning. Just checking on your ETA. Ceremony starts at 11, but graduates need to arrive by 10:15. At 9:30, my phone finally buzzed. My heart leaped, then immediately sank as I read my mother's message. "Woke up not feeling well. Your father also exhausted from long work week. Don't think we can make the drive after all. So sorry, sweetheart. Take lots of pictures." I stared at the screen, reading the message again and again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They weren't coming. After 4 years, after all the planning and reminders and hope they had decided, the morning of the ceremony, that they were too tired to attend their daughter's college graduation. My hands shook as I typed a reply. "Are you serious? I've been planning this for months. It's my graduation." The response came quickly. "I know, and we're so sorry. Your father really isn't up for the 4-hour drive each way. We're just too exhausted. You know we're proud of you." Did I know that? Had they ever actually said those words to me? I sat on my bed, still in my robe, the carefully arranged twist in my hair suddenly feeling ridiculous. Who was I trying to impress? The empty chairs where my family should have been. For a moment, I considered not going to the ceremony at all. What was the point? The people who were supposed to care the most couldn't be bothered to show up. But then anger flared hot and clarifying. No, they had taken enough from me over the years. They would not take this too. I put on my dress, a navy blue sheath I had carefully selected for its professional appearance, thinking about the photos we would take together afterward. I pinned my graduation cap to my twisted hair, straightened the honor cords draped around my neck, and took a single selfie in the mirror. Then I walked alone to the assembly area where graduates were gathering. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. I walked across the stage when my name was called, accepted my diploma with a smile that felt frozen on my face, and moved the tassel on my cap from right to left. There was polite applause from the audience, but no cheers, no whistles, no cardboard cutouts of my face held aloft by enthusiastic relatives. After the ceremony, I stood awkwardly at the edges of other people's celebrations. Families embraced their graduates' faces wet with happy tears. Proud parents posed for photographs beaming with pride. Grandparents pressed envelopes containing checks or gift cards into graduates' hands. I watched it all with a hollow ache in my chest. Dr. Henderson, my economics professor and thesis advisor, spotted me standing alone and made his way over. "Congratulations, Lucia," he said warmly. "Your thesis was the strongest in the department this year. Have you had a chance to introduce me to your family?" "They couldn't make it," I said the words sticking in my throat. Something in my expression must have communicated more than my words, because Dr. Henderson's face softened with understanding. Well, their loss is my gain, he said smoothly. Would you do me the honor of joining my family for lunch? My wife has been dying to meet the brilliant student I've been talking about all semester. His kindness nearly undid me. Thank you, I managed. That's very generous, but I have other plans. The lie tasted bitter, but the thought of being a charity case at someone else's family celebration was too humiliating to bear. I spent the afternoon wandering the campus, saying goodbye to the buildings and spaces that had been my home for 4 years. By evening, I was hungry and emotionally exhausted. I considered canceling the dinner reservation I'd made weeks ago for my family celebration, but some stubborn part of me refused to let go of this last piece of my graduation plan. So at 7 o'clock, I arrived alone at the Stained Glass, an upscale restaurant overlooking Lake Michigan. The hostess glanced behind me, clearly looking for the rest of my party. Reservation for Winston party of 5. I said the words feeling like glass in my mouth. It will just be me tonight. Her smile faltered. Oh, would you prefer a smaller table then? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further. She led me to a table for 2 by the window, instead of the round table for 5 I had originally reserved. As I sat down, I could feel curious glances from nearby diners, no doubt wondering why a young woman in graduation attire was dining alone at such a nice restaurant. Special occasion, the waiter asked as he handed me a menu. College graduation, I replied, forcing a smile. Congratulations, he said enthusiastically. Are you waiting for others to join you? No, I said. It's just me. His professional demeanor didn't slip, but I saw the flicker of pity in his eyes before he turned to describe the evening's specials. I ordered a glass of wine, my first legal drink since turning 21, and the smallest entree on the menu, knowing my appetite had vanished. The table across from me hosted a large family celebrating their son's graduation from Northwestern's medical school. Their laughter and toasts served as a painful counterpoint to my silent meal. I paid the bill with the credit card my father had given me for emergencies and walked back to my apartment through the gathering twilight. My roommates were still out with their families. The place was quiet, empty. I kicked off my shoes still in my graduation dress and sank onto my bed. That's when I made the mistake of checking social media. The notification appeared innocuously enough, a simple alert that my mother had posted new photos. I tapped on it automatically, my brain too emotionally drained to prepare for what I was about to see. And then there it was, filling my phone screen, my parents smiling broadly, arms around my sister at her art exhibition. The timestamp on the post showed 4:37 p.m., exactly when I had been wandering alone around campus after the graduation ceremony. My father, who had been too exhausted for the drive to my graduation, looked energetic and proud in a crisp button-down shirt I'd never seen before. My mother, supposedly not feeling well, was radiant in a new dress, her makeup flawless, champagne glass raised in a toast. The caption read, "So proud of our incredible daughter at her first professional exhibition, how a proud parents, rising artist." I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin around me as I scrolled through more photos. There were at least 20 of them documenting the entire event. My parents with Megan in front of her artwork, my parents with the gallery owner, my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in over a year, all gathered to celebrate Megan. A group shot showed my grandfather, who rarely left his assisted living facility due to mobility issues, sitting in a wheelchair in the center of the family group. They had all been there, all of them. While I walked across the graduation stage alone, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I clicked on my aunt's profile and found even more photos. One showed my parents arriving at the gallery, timestamp 10:45 a.m., 15 minutes before my graduation ceremony began. They hadn't been too tired to drive. They hadn't been sick. They had chosen deliberately and consciously to skip my college graduation in favor of Megan's art show. The physical reaction came first. A wave of nausea so intense I had to rush to the bathroom, still clutching my phone. After emptying my stomach of the few bites of dinner I'd managed to eat, I slid down against the cool tile wall, my graduation dress bunching around my knees, and finally allowed myself to break down completely. I cried until my eyes burned and my throat was raw, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from the deepest part of me. It wasn't just today's betrayal. It was 23 years of being second best, of making excuses for them, of telling myself that maybe this time they would see me. When the tears finally subsided, I felt hollow and strangely calm. I returned to my room and methodically took screenshots of every social media post from the art exhibition, noting the timestamps. Some primitive part of my brain needed to preserve the evidence to confirm that I wasn't overreacting or misinterpreting. The reality was right there in pixels and timestamps. My parents had lied to avoid my graduation and had attended my sister's event instead. As I scrolled, a text notification appeared from Megan. "Wish you could have been here. My exhibition was amazing. Mom and Dad brought practically the entire family." Something snapped inside me. Did she not know? Had our parents not even told her that today was my graduation? Or did she know and simply not care like the rest of them? I didn't respond to her text. Instead, I curled up on my bed, still in my graduation dress, and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally pulled me into an uneasy sleep. The last thought that crossed my mind before darkness claimed me was a realization, both painful and liberating. I was truly on my own, and perhaps I always had been. Morning brought no relief. My eyes were swollen from crying, and my head pounded with a dull, persistent ache. I checked my phone, 3 missed calls from my mother, and several text messages asking if I'd gotten her previous text and how the graduation had gone. As if she didn't know. As if she expected me to play along with the fiction that they had been too tired to attend, rather than deliberately choosing Megan's event over mine. I set the phone down without responding and went through the motions of my morning routine. Shower, coffee, staring blankly at the wall. My roommates returned from their hotel breakfast with their families bubbling with excitement about their celebration dinners and post-graduation plans. I smiled mechanically and offered appropriate responses, while feeling as though I was watching myself from a great distance. By mid-morning, I couldn't put it off any longer. I had to talk to my parents. I had to hear them say it. I needed to know if they would admit to the lie, or if they would double down, expecting me to swallow this final insult, as I had swallowed so many others over the years. I picked up my phone and called home. My mother answered on the second ring, her voice bright and casual. "Lucia, I was beginning to worry when you didn't respond to my texts. How was the ceremony?" I had rehearsed what I would say, had planned to remain calm and rational, to lay out the evidence methodically. But at the sound of her voice, so normal, so completely unbothered, all my careful preparation evaporated. "How was the ceremony?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You mean the college graduation you lied about being too tired to attend while you were actually at Megan's art show?" There was a moment of absolute silence on the line. Then, "What are you talking about?" "I saw the pictures, Mom," I said. "All of you at the gallery, time-stamped during my graduation ceremony. The ceremony you told me you were too exhausted and sick to attend." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted to a defensive tone I knew all too well. "Lucia, you're blowing this out of proportion. Your father really wasn't feeling up to the long drive, but Megan's show was right here in Minneapolis. It wasn't the same commitment." "So you lied to me," I said flatly. "You could have just told me you were choosing her exhibition over my graduation. That would have hurt, but at least it would have been honest." "We weren't choosing one over the other," my mother insisted, her voice rising. "These things just happened to fall on the same weekend. We couldn't be in two places at once." "You've known about my graduation date for months," I countered. "I sent the invitations in February. I made dinner reservations. I arranged everything to make it easy for you to be there. And we appreciated that, but circumstances changed. Megan's exhibition was only confirmed last month, and it was such an important opportunity for her. Her professor said gallery owners from New York might be there. This could be a turning point in her career." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone against my ear so hard it hurt. And my college graduation wasn't important. Completing my degree with honors after 4 years of work. That didn't matter enough for you to show up. "Of course it mattered," my mother said, but there was a hesitation in her voice that told me everything I needed to know. "But we knew you'd be fine. You've always been so independent, so capable of handling things on your own." Because I've had to be, I shouted, surprising myself with the volume of my voice. Because you and Dad have been so focused on Megan my entire life that I had no choice but to be self-sufficient. I heard movement on the line, and then my father's voice came through, stern and authoritative. Lucia, that's enough. Your mother is getting upset, and this whole conversation is unnecessary. We're sorry we couldn't make it to your ceremony, but that's no reason to throw a tantrum and make accusations about favoritism. Accusations. I laughed bitterly. Dad, it's not an accusation when it's simply stating facts. You've always favored Megan. Always. My whole life I've watched you celebrate her every achievement while barely acknowledging mine. I was valedictorian, and you checked your watch during my speech. I won a full scholarship to Northwestern, and you said it was expected. I graduated with honors yesterday, and you couldn't even bother to show up because you were too busy celebrating Megan's art show. That's not fair, my father said, his voice hardening. We've supported you just as much as your sister. Name one time, I challenged. Name one time you went to one of my events instead of hers when they conflicted. One time you celebrated my achievements the way you celebrate hers. One time you put me first. The silence on the line stretched out, damning in its emptiness. That's what I thought, I said quietly. Lucia, my father finally responded, his voice cold. You've always been fine on your own. You've never needed the kind of encouragement and support that Megan does. She's more sensitive, more artistic. Your personality is different. So I deserve less love because I'm more academically inclined, because I don't fall apart at the slightest challenge. That's your justification. No one is saying you deserve less love, my father retorted. But you're being childish and ungrateful right now. Do you have any idea the sacrifices we've made for your education? The tuition payments before your scholarship kicked in? The applications we helped you with? Applications you helped me with, I repeated incredulously. Dad, I filled out every college application by myself. I wrote my own essays. I researched scholarships on my own. You didn't even read my personal statement before I submitted it. Well, you didn't need us to, he shot back. That's my point. You've always been capable of handling these things yourself. Because you never gave me any other option. I was shouting again, tears streaming down my face. I had to be self-sufficient because you were too busy with Megan to notice me unless I was perfect. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? To know that her parents' attention and approval are conditional on never needing anything, never showing weakness, never asking for help. My mother's voice came back on the line, tearful now. That's a terrible thing to say, Lucia. We've always loved you. How can you accuse us of such awful things? It's not an accusation, Mom. It's my lived experience. It's 23 years of watching you prioritize Megan over me at every turn. And yesterday was the final proof I needed. You lied to me so you wouldn't have to admit you were choosing her again. We didn't lie, my mother insisted. We really were tired and— Stop, I interrupted. Just stop. I saw the photos, time-stamped during my graduation. You were all there. You, Dad, the extended family, even Grandpa in his wheelchair. Everyone made the effort for Megan that you couldn't make for me. My father's voice cut in again. Lucia, you're working yourself up over nothing. This conversation isn't productive. When you've calmed down and can discuss this rationally. The call ended abruptly as he hung up on me. I stared at my phone in disbelief, then threw it across the room where it bounced harmlessly on my desk chair. Seconds later, it began buzzing with text messages. I ignored it for several minutes before finally retrieving it to see what they had to say. The messages were a jumble of defensiveness and guilt-tripping from both parents. We're very hurt by your accusations. After all we've done for you, you're being extremely unfair. Call us when you're ready to apologize. We don't deserve this kind of treatment. Not one message acknowledged my pain or the legitimacy of my feelings. Not one admitted to the lie or the pattern of behavior I had described. It was all about their hurt feelings, their victimhood in the face of my unfair accusations. As I was reading through these messages, my phone rang again. It was Megan. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I could handle another conversation with any member of my family. Lucia. Megan's voice was smaller than usual, uncertain. Mom and Dad just told me what happened. They said you're upset about missing my exhibition. I closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. That's not what I'm upset about, Megan. I'm upset that they lied about being too tired to come to my college graduation when they were actually at your exhibition. I'm upset about 23 years of being treated like I matter less than you do. There was a pause. They didn't tell me your graduation was yesterday, she said finally. I swear, Lucia, if I'd known, I would have told them to go to yours instead. I would have insisted. I wanted to believe her, but at that moment I couldn't trust anyone in my family. It doesn't matter now, I said flatly. It's done. I'm sorry, she said, and she sounded sincere. But Lucia, you've ruined my special day by causing all this drama. My first real exhibition, and now everyone's upset and fighting. Why couldn't you have waited to bring this up? And there it was. Even in her apology, it was still about her feelings, her special day, her needs. The Winston family priority system remained intact. Goodbye, Megan, I said quietly and ended the call. I turned off my phone and sat in the silence of my room, feeling oddly calm after the emotional storm of the confrontation. Something had shifted inside me, some burden I'd been carrying for as long as I could remember. The weight of seeking approval from parents who would never give it. The exhaustion of making excuses for behavior that was at its core inexcusable. For the first time in my life, I was seeing the situation with absolute clarity. And with that clarity came the realization that I needed to make some decisions about what happened next. I kept my phone turned off for a full week, focusing instead on packing up my apartment and preparing for my move to a studio in Chicago, where I would start my job at a consulting firm the following month. My roommates cast concerned glances my way, but respected my obvious desire for space. Ashley, who had witnessed my parents' absence at graduation, brought me coffee and sat with me in companionable silence as I sorted through 4 years of accumulated possessions. During that week of silence, I thought constantly about my family and our relationship. I reflected on patterns I had accepted as normal for my entire life, questioning for the first time whether I wanted to continue those patterns into adulthood. The emotional distance provided clarity I had never experienced before. I thought about complete estrangement, cutting all ties with my parents and sister, starting fresh in Chicago, with no family connections at all. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. No more disappointment, no more being the afterthought, no more pretending that the scraps of attention thrown my way were enough. But also, no more family, no more history, no more connection to my roots. On the 5th day of my self-imposed isolation, my phone still powered off in my desk drawer. There was a knock at the apartment door. Ashley answered it and came to my room looking uncertain. "There's someone here to see you," she said. "Your aunt." I looked up from the books I was packing, surprised. "My Aunt Julia." Ashley nodded. "She says she drove from Minneapolis to check on you because you're not answering your phone." I hadn't expected anyone from my family to make the effort to come find me in person, especially not to drive 4 hours without any certainty that I would even be at the apartment. Curiosity won out over my desire for continued isolation, and I went to the living room where my mother's sister waited, looking tired and worried. "Lucia," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Thank goodness. Your parents have been beside themselves, unable to reach you." I crossed my arms over my chest. "Did they send you to convince me to apologize?" Aunt Julia shook her head. "No, they don't even know I'm here. I came because I'm worried about you, and because I think you deserve to hear some truths that might help you understand, even if they don't excuse what happened." I gestured to the couch and we both sat down. Ashley discreetly retreated to her room, giving us privacy. "I was at the exhibition," Julia said without preamble. "I saw the photos your mother posted, and I knew immediately what they would mean to you. I tried to talk to your parents afterward, but they were defensive and dismissive." I nodded, unsurprised. "They hung up on me when I confronted them, then sent texts about how hurt they were by my accusations." "That sounds like Karen," Julia said with a sad smile. "My sister has never been good at accepting criticism or acknowledging when she's caused pain. It's a family trait, unfortunately. Our mother was the same way." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Knowing that my mother comes by her emotional negligence honestly, Julia winced. No, nothing excuses what they've done, but context might help you process it. She took a deep breath. Did you know that Karen was the forgotten child in our family, that our parents doted on me while treating her as an afterthought? This was news to me. My mother had rarely spoken about her childhood, and when she did, it was always in vague, positive generalizations. Our father was a musician, Julia continued. I inherited his talent and was playing concert piano by age 7. Karen had no musical ability whatsoever. In our household, that was unforgivable. Our parents took me to competitions across the country, enrolled me in the best music programs, showcased me to friends and family. Meanwhile, Karen was left to fend for herself. She got straight A's, joined every club, won academic awards, and our parents barely noticed. The parallels were impossible to miss. So she's doing to me exactly what was done to her, I said slowly. Making Megan the golden child because she shares a talent that mom values while ignoring me because I remind her of herself. Julia nodded. I think there's truth in that. Karen never resolved her feelings about our childhood. When Megan showed artistic talent, it activated something in your mother, a chance to right the wrong that had been done to her but from the other side. She became obsessed with giving Megan the recognition and support she never received. At my expense, I added. Yes, Julia acknowledged. And it was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. I've tried to talk to her about it over the years, but she gets defensive. She doesn't see the pattern or doesn't want to. What about my father? I asked. What's his excuse? Julia sighed. Robert's family had its own dysfunction. His father was extremely critical, never satisfied with anything Robert achieved. Your father coped by becoming the perfect son. Straight A's, athletic accomplishments, prestigious college, successful career. When you came along so much like him in temperament and abilities, I think he unconsciously expected you to handle pressure the way he did, by excelling without complaint or need for encouragement. I absorbed this information, turning it over in my mind. It helped explain the dynamic, but as Julia had said, it didn't excuse it. I want you to know, Julia continued, reaching for my hand, that your graduation was important, that your achievements matter, that you deserve parents who showed up for you, who celebrated your successes with the same enthusiasm they showed for your sisters, and I'm sorry I didn't do more to intervene over the years. Tears welled in my eyes. Thank you for saying that. What will you do now? She asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to cut them off completely, start fresh in Chicago with no family baggage. But another part knows that's a reaction born of hurt, rather than a carefully considered decision. Julia nodded. Whatever you decide, I want you to know I'm here for you. Really here, not just saying the words. And I'm proud of you, Lucia. So incredibly proud of all you've accomplished. Her words, so simple and yet so desperately needed, broke through the last of my defenses. I cried, then really cried as my aunt held me. For the little girl who had learned to expect nothing. For the teenager who had achieved everything and received little recognition. For the young woman who had walked across a graduation stage alone. After Julia left, promising to stay in touch regardless of what I decided about my relationship with my parents, I felt a new sense of resolve. I wasn't ready to cut my family off entirely, but I also couldn't continue with the status quo. Something had to change, and since my parents seemed incapable of acknowledging the problem, the change would have to come from me. I powered up my phone to find dozens of missed calls and messages from my parents and Megan. Most followed the same pattern as before: defensive, self-justifying, demanding an apology for my overreaction. But the most recent ones had shifted to concern about my silence, veering into guilt-tripping about how worried they were and how selfish I was being by not responding. Taking a deep breath, I opened my laptop and began composing an email. An email that would clearly state my feelings, establish boundaries, and outline what needed to change if we were to have any relationship moving forward. It took me 3 hours and multiple drafts to get the wording right, to be honest, without being vindictive, firm, without being cruel. The final version read, "Dear Mom, Dad, and Megan, I've taken some time to process what happened surrounding my graduation and our subsequent conversation. I needed space to think clearly about patterns that have defined our family dynamic for as long as I can remember. I want to be direct throughout my life. I have consistently felt less valued, less celebrated, and less important than Megan. This is not about sibling rivalry or jealousy. It is about a pattern of behavior where my achievements were treated as expected and unremarkable, while Megan's were treated as extraordinary and worthy of celebration. It is about countless instances where my events were skipped in favor of Megan's. It is about growing up feeling that I needed to be perfect, just to receive the basic attention and affirmation that Megan received automatically. The decision to lie about being too tired to attend my college graduation while actually attending Megan's art exhibition was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of similar choices that have communicated consistently and clearly that I am secondary in our family hierarchy. I am not writing this to hurt you or to elicit defensiveness. I am writing because I cannot and will not continue in a relationship where this dynamic persists. Moving forward, I need several things to change. 1. Acknowledgement of the pattern I've described without deflection or minimization. 2. A genuine apology for the hurt caused particularly regarding my graduation. 3. A commitment to more balanced attention and interest in my life and achievements. 4. Respect for my boundaries and feelings, even when they're uncomfortable for you to hear. Until these conditions are met, I need to create some distance for my own emotional well-being. I will be moving to Chicago next week to begin my new job. I will not be returning to Minneapolis before then. Once I'm settled, I am open to further conversation if it can be conducted with honesty and respect for my perspective. This is not an ultimatum designed to hurt you. It is a boundary I am setting to protect myself from further pain. I hope we can build a healthier relationship moving forward, but that can only happen with mutual respect and acknowledgement of past patterns. Lucia. I read the email 3 times before finally clicking send, my heart pounding but my mind clear. It was done. The ball was in their court now. Whatever happened next would depend on their ability to hear me, really hear me perhaps for the first time. The response was not immediate, which itself was telling. In the past, any hint of conflict or criticism had been met with swift defensiveness from my parents. The fact that a full day passed before I received any reply suggested they were actually considering my words rather than reacting instinctively. The first message came from my mother, a text that simply read, "We got your email. We're thinking about what you said. Please know we love you." No defensiveness, no guilt tripping, just an acknowledgement and a simple expression of love. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was a start. 3 days passed. I continued packing scheduled utilities for my new apartment in Chicago and met with friends for farewell dinners. I tried not to obsessively check my phone for further communication from my family with limited success. On the 4th day after sending the email, I received a call from my father. I hesitated before answering, steeling myself for whatever might come. "Lucia," he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Thank you for picking up." "Of course," I replied neutrally. There was a moment of awkward silence before he continued. "I've been thinking about your email, about what you said regarding how we've treated you compared to Megan. I want you to know that I never intended to make you feel less valued. But intentions don't change impact, do they?" The admission, so unlike my father's usual defensive stance, caught me off guard. "No," I agreed softly. "They don't. I'm not good at this," he continued, a hint of his familiar discomfort with emotional conversations creeping into his tone. "Talking about feelings, acknowledging mistakes. But I need to tell you that I'm sorry, truly sorry for missing your graduation, for all the times I've taken your accomplishments for granted, for putting the burden of being the strong one on you since you were just a child." Tears pricked at my eyes. "Thank you for saying that, Dad." "Your Aunt Julia came to see us," he admitted. "She was quite forceful in making us see how our behavior has affected you. She made us confront some uncomfortable truths about our parenting." That explained the unexpected shift in their response. I made a mental note to thank Julia later. Your mother is having a harder time with this, my father continued. She sees parallels with her own childhood that are difficult for her to face. But she's trying. We both are. We don't want to lose you, Lucia. I don't want that either, I said truthfully. But I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not. I can't keep accepting being an afterthought in my own family. I understand, he said, and for perhaps the first time I believed that he might. We'd like to come see you in Chicago once you're settled, to talk more in person. Would that be all right? I considered the request. Yes, I decided, but not right away. I need some time to establish myself there first. Of course, he agreed. Just let us know when you're ready. After we hung up, I sat on my bed turning the conversation over in my mind. It wasn't a complete resolution. There was still much to discuss, many years of hurt to address. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall of denial that had characterized our family dynamic for so long. Megan texted me that evening. I'm sorry, Lucia, really sorry. I never wanted to be the favorite. And I never wanted you to feel less important. Can we talk sometime? I responded with a simple yes soon and left it at that. My relationship with my sister would need to be rebuilt on different terms as well, but that would take time. The day before my move to Chicago, I received a package from my parents. Inside was a silver frame containing my graduation photo, the selfie I had taken alone in my apartment before the ceremony. Accompanying it was a card that read simply, "We should have been there. We are so proud of you. This is just the beginning of making amends if you'll give us the chance." It was a small gesture, but meaningful in its acknowledgement of both their absence and my achievement. I packed the framed photo carefully among my belongings for the move. The following weeks were a blur of new beginnings, settling into my apartment in Chicago's Lakeview neighborhood, starting my position at the consulting firm, establishing routines in an unfamiliar city. The distance from Minneapolis and my family provided space to breathe, to think, to determine what kind of relationship I wanted moving forward. 3 months after graduation, my father called with an unexpected proposition. Your mother and I have been seeing a family therapist, he said. It's been challenging, but helpful. We've been discussing our relationships with both you and Megan, and the therapist suggested it might be beneficial for all four of us to have a session together when you're ready. I was surprised by their willingness to take this step. I'd consider that, I said cautiously, but I'm not ready to come back to Minneapolis yet. We thought we might come to you, he suggested. We could meet with a therapist in Chicago, make a weekend of it. The effort implied in this offer, traveling to me rather than expecting me to come to them, engaging in therapy as a family, acknowledging publicly that there were issues to address, was significant. It represented a genuine attempt to shift the dynamic to meet me on my terms rather than theirs. Okay, I agreed. Let me look into therapists here who do family counseling. When we eventually met for that first session, it was awkward and emotional and occasionally heated. My mother cried as she talked about her own childhood and how she had unconsciously recreated the same dynamic with her daughters, just from the opposite position. My father acknowledged his discomfort with emotions and his tendency to retreat into cold logician mode when faced with conflict. Megan admitted that she had always been aware on some level of the preferential treatment and had felt both guilty about it and afraid to lose it. I spoke my truth, calmly but firmly, without minimizing the hurt I had experienced or the lasting impact it had on my self-worth and my ability to trust. The therapist skillfully guided us through the conversation, ensuring that everyone was heard and that no one person's feelings were prioritized over another's. It was just one session, and a single conversation couldn't undo 23 years of established patterns. But it was a start, a foundation upon which we could build a different kind of relationship if we all committed to the work involved. Over the following months, we continued with occasional family therapy sessions via video call. My parents made more consistent efforts to show interest in my life and career. My mother called regularly just to check in, making a point of asking about my work and my new friends before mentioning anything about Megan. My father sent articles related to my field that he thought might interest me, showing an engagement with my professional life that had been largely absent before. For her part, Megan and I began to build a relationship independent of our parents, talking directly about our shared experiences growing up in a household with such a clear favorite. These conversations were sometimes painful, but ultimately healing, allowing us to see each other as allies rather than competitors. The first major test came 6 months after my move to Chicago, when I received a significant promotion at work. In the past, such an achievement would have been acknowledged with cursory congratulations before the conversation turned to Megan's latest artistic endeavor. This time, my parents sent flowers to my office and called to ask detailed questions about my new responsibilities and how I felt about the advancement. My father even suggested taking me to dinner in Chicago to celebrate when they visited the following month. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it represented the beginning of change. Real change, not just temporary adjustments designed to appease me before reverting to old patterns. Today, 2 years after that fateful graduation day, our family dynamic is different. Not perfect, not completely healed, but markedly improved. We still have moments of backsliding times when old habits reassert themselves. But now we have language to address these slips, to call them out and course correct. I've learned that family relationships, like all relationships, require ongoing maintenance and honest communication. I've also learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy connections. Most importantly, I've learned that my worth isn't determined by my parents' ability to see it. That was perhaps the most valuable lesson of all. The framed graduation photo sits on my desk in my Chicago apartment. No longer a painful reminder of absence, but a symbol of my strength and the beginning of a journey toward healing. Next to it stands a more recent photo. All four of us at Thanksgiving last year, smiling genuine smiles, a family still in progress, but moving in the right direction. Have you ever had to confront painful patterns in your own family, or set boundaries that changed a relationship for the better? Share your experiences in the comments below. I find so much strength in our shared stories. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear they're not alone. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak your truth, even when your voice shakes.